So we've covered Matcaps in Nomad quite a few times, but we haven't done a really nice comic book look like this. So this is Toby, and he is an Iliac 600 Ripper from Halo Jones, which is a 2000 AD story from back in the 80s. It's a superb character. It's really well written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Ian Gibson, one of my favourite characters in comic book history. So we've done a model, and this particular video is all about how to get this black and white Matcap comic book look. So let's dive right in and just start making this look. So we've got our model. In this case, it's this Toby dog from 2000 AD. This is the reference I used here in the background. So I'm after this kind of graphic style. And obviously I've got a metallic solid look here, which is just nothing like what we need. So there's quite a few steps to go through. It's very, very simple in some ways, but you have to follow these steps. So at the moment, this model is in a hierarchy. I'll hold it open like this and you can see all of the parts are here. That means I can pose it however I want, which is the power of what we've got with this new system in Nomad. So this is great for getting your poses. If you've put everything in the right way and you've got the right hierarchy, and you can do all of this crazy posing. So that's a whole different video on its own. That's a whole different set of things to learn. Once you've got it to the point where you've posed it and you're happy with the pose, which I'm going to say this is it because it matches quite closely to that, which is this one in the background. We can turn this plane off in the background because we're not going to need this now. And then you can see that I've got it roughly posed by the way that I've just shown you. I've roughly posed it correctly to my reference. And you can see there I'm highlighting certain bits and I'm just making sure that it's on point to the reference by rotating it. Notice that each bit that I touch is highlighted in green. That's going to be really important when you get towards the end of the video because we're going to switch that to a different color and a different look. So what do we want to do? So everything in the scene except for the lights. In fact, to be honest, the lights can be deleted. So let's just delete them and that saves us even worrying about those. So all we're going to need, let's just delete each of them. So that's all the lights have gone now. And then everything else, because we're in the right place, we can crush it together with one exception. So we've made a sphere that we've mushed around a little bit and it's here, and that's going to be a shadow eventually. Now, as it stands at the moment, even if it had the same sort of reflective material on, I'll just paint it so you can see it. It's not a shadow in terms, it's not usable as a shadow at all. But all that is just a sphere crushed down and just made into the shape that I wanted, pulling left and right for the shadow. So that's that done. And it doesn't need to be straight, doesn't need to be level or anything. You'll see why in a moment. So the first thing to do is to crush all this down. So we leave that sphere, which is that shadow, and we can get rid of that plane completely now. We've turned it off, but we can delete it to make it even easier. And if we tick all of these boxes of everything else, come all the way to the top, make sure everything's turned on, and then crush it all together apart from the shadow, which is the sphere, and then we do join. What that's going to do is it's going to mush it all into one object. It won't voxel merge it. It's not going to merge it all together to make it unusable. It's just put it so that every piece is together. So now, if you notice, that green outline is all the way around just the one model. And again, that's going to be important in a minute. So let's just start working through what we want to do. So the first thing that we really need to do is get rid of it being a lit scene. So you've got PBR, so physically based rendering. So that's using a lit environment. And you can see the environment reflected here in any of the reflections. We don't want any of that. So we're going to get rid of that and turn it to Matcap. And now what we've got there is a traditional looking Matcap. So if you know ZBrush or Blender, you'll know that that's a Matcap and it's made to look like red wax. So we've got all the videos that cover Matcaps, but what I want to do is just quickly explain what a Matcap is when we switch to Procreate. So for now, for this next couple of minutes, just realize that I've switched it over here to Matcap. And the next thing you want to do is switch it to a new Matcap. So you Click on here and you've got all of your Matcaps here. But what you'll find is none of these will give you the comic look that you want. They're close, some of them, if you've got my pack that we've got in our resource hub, but none of them are close enough for this job. So we've got to go and make ourselves a Matcap. So if you look at this Matcap, for example, and you look here, you're seeing a picture of this pink waxy looking thing. Now that is what the lighting is derived from. So it will actually take that picture and basically wrap it around your model. So you'll always get a highlight around here. As you can see on this bit, this white highlight is here and you've got dark down here. So anything to the bottom left is down here. And you can roll that Matcap around. So see this light here, watch it here. If I do 3 fingers and roll, so that white light is moving to the side now. And that's the Matcap, or the material captured all into one shader, moving around the model. So this isn't moving lights. This isn't moving any of the scene lighting or any individual lights. There are no lights now. This is simply just moving the Matcap. So let's take a look at the Matcaps that we want to make first of all. So let's switch over to Procreate. And in Procreate, what you'll see is this is a Matcap that I've made. And basically, if you take an image like this, you can make your own. They're very, very simple. It has to be a circle within a square, any size you want, as long as it reaches the edges. And it will pick the data from this image and project it onto the model. So if that little white highlight is there, that'll come onto your model. So let's quickly switch back and we'll just look at this purple one just to show you what I mean. So back in Nomad, we'll bring that one in just to show you what it's like. So go to Matcap, import photos, and we'll bring that purple one in, add it, and there you go, it's applied to the model. Now, as you can see, it's got this white highlight, and I can move that highlight around because I'm moving the image around it. So it's giving me an approximation of what that texture does wrapped around this model. So that's pretty much how all of these Matcaps are working. So every one of the Matcaps in here is just an image like this. So we need something different than that. So what we're going to do is switch back to Procreate, and in Procreate we'll keep that same square and we'll turn that image off, and all we'll do is we'll just add one little square like this. So all I've done is I've taken a rectangle, and if you don't know how to do it, I'll show you quickly. You just draw a rectangle like that, click on black and drag that in, and that's that done on, and that's on its own layer, so you can move it around. And that gives us now one black bar on a white background. We didn't even bother doing a circle. We didn't even bother trying to give it an edge, because what you would be tempted to do is predict where that edge is going to be and put a black outline around it. Now, you can do that if you want, but I've found you don't need to do that. So let's just take a couple more. So we'll take that one and we'll duplicate that bar, duplicate, move it along, and we'll put a bar there, and maybe even one more. We might use them, we might not. And there's 3 different ones. Now I'll save those and then we'll jump back to Nomad. So here we are in Nomad. Let's bring those Matcaps in. So import photos again. And now what that's done is that's applied one of them to the surface. Now you can just check which one it is. We'll leave it open for a minute by pinning it. So we've got that one with 2 bars. So that's got quite a lot of black going all around the model. But we don't want that. Let's just try this one, which is a single black bar, and that gives us quite a lot of white, which I quite like. Now what you can do is you can move that around, so you can move it like that. But before we do that, before we finalize that bit, let's just put on some other additional things to make this work a little bit better. Now the green outline, you need to change that to black. So this is just simply outline here, switched on. You can see it disappearing, and changed to black. Now that does help. That gives you an outline around everything that you've done. So instantly that's useful. And this down here, that's got a bit of a shine on it. This is your the circle that we mushed around, and it's got this horrible reflective thing on it, but we don't want that at all. So on this model here, so you can see the outline there, so you know you're not on the dog anymore. So what we need to do is go in here, and in the color, make sure it's all the way black, and then force paint. And what that gives you now is a non-reflective black shape. So you can move that shape now. You can use the move tool, and you can just move that shape around, and that is now quite a malleable shadow. And it's got a black outline, as you can see here when it goes behind the model, but we'll never be on that. so that won't matter. So this is a way of faking these shadows. So you're not even working with a ground plane here. What you're doing is you're building a shadow per scene that you want. So for this particular scene, I want that shadow, and I want that shadow to match roughly this here. So you can do a bit more work on that. You can even chop that up, start using the knife tool, whatever you want. As long as it's solid black, it's going to work for you. So that's the shadow sorted. So back to the dog, and that gives us the black outline again. Now, a couple more things that we want to do. So we can now move this around. So we can try and match the reference a little bit. So you're moving that black bar around to give you, you know, whatever's the closest to you know, the look that you've got over here. But it's still not right. There's still quite a few things wrong with it. So if you come to post-processing, and then you come up here and switch post-processing on, and then work down. You can't see it very well because I've got a white background. So what you can do is you can affect the overall transparency of your panels, just in case you didn't know that. Or you can even darken the panel. So you've got a color panel as a cream color here. You can just switch that to a darker color if that helps. So now we'll open it up again and we'll pin it open so you can see it. So what do we want to work on here? So do we want reflections? No, we don't. Do we want the max samples and resolution up? Yep. So we'll go as high as we can with that. Reflections, as I said, off. Global illumination doesn't really matter for this. Ambient occlusion, we really don't want that on, because ambient occlusion is going to give you these dark areas. So in some shots it might work, but generally that makes it look more 3D. So keep ambient occlusion off if you want this really stark white look. Bloom we definitely don't want on. As you can see, it will just destroy everything you've done. The one that we're really looking for is down here, which is curvature. And if you switch that on, you've got curvature bump and curvature cavity. And as I scroll these up and down, you can see one will affect the deep areas and one will affect the edges more. So I would crank both of those quite high, and that gives you quite a nice effect. If it's too much, move this around and try and find a happy balance. So you can go all the way around with that image and you'll get virtually a line drawing. So if you think about that, if you wanted a line drawing, then what you could do is you could simply just do a white Matcap. So bear that in mind if that's something that you want. While I'm at this point, I've just noticed that that shadow is incorrect. So we're going to just move that shadow down again, and we'll just make sure that it works with the rest of our drawing. So we don't want that shadow coming above that foot. Back to the dog. And now there's a couple more things wrong with it that still aren't working well for me. So if I get the lighting to a place that I like, so it might be that it'd be there, and it's working in most cases. Actually, look at that. I've found that the dog shadow is just wrong again on that foot there. So I'm going to move it again. So it does take some tweaking. Back to the dog. So he's nearly there now, but when I roll this round, sometimes some areas of the model just don't look right. So I'll give you an example. So if I moved it all the way to here, there's still areas that aren't looking good. So what you can actually do is you can paint them in. So if you come over to paint, make your paint completely black, which it already was, and then come quite a small brush and just go into that nose, and then just paint in the areas that you know you want to be always black. So the nose is always going to be black. And because this was quite a high-res model, this is vertex painting, so it's picking it up quite nicely. It's not, you know, if you've got a low-res model, this won't be as nice. So just move it around a little bit like this and get it working for the whole nose. And then we'll move to the side, come down here. So now you're really painting on the model. You really are getting into the realms of faking this a little bit now, but then all of this is obviously fake. And you might want to, for certain shots, you might want to, for example, paint in the ears to be black. So if I can't get that light to work correctly like that, because it's making everywhere too dark, I get to wherever I think is the best part, and then possibly just go in and paint that in. And so you're really doing, you know, much more of an artistic than a technical decision there. You're deciding where you want areas to be black. I've just undone that because I went too far over there. So I just want to edge it like that first of all. Put a nice crisp edge in. up to the edge here, and then, and this is just, I suppose, this is just like inking, isn't it? You know, you're literally drawing on a model, but it's you're actually putting black ink into the scene. And I'll go up under that ear. Actually, I wasn't going to, but I will go up under there. If you go over too much, like I have done in the corner there, just go back to white, because you're only working with 2 colours here. So, and then you can just tighten that line down there, like so. So if that's something that you want, now that's not going to move. So if you move this around, you can see that that black stays with whatever. So for a certain specific shot, that might be how you achieve it. And that pretty much is it. So you can swap these Matcaps out. You can change it for the double one, you can change it for the treble one, and you'll get, you know, you'll get different effects for different frames. So say you're building up a comic that you want to make with Nomad, then what you might want to do is that you might want to switch the background to black for certain shots, and then you can make quite dramatic shots that way. Again, you might need a different Matcap for that to make sure it pops out off the page. You definitely don't want references in there anymore. We'll switch it back to white, and just keep working around like that. And as you can see, with very little work, you've got pretty much the Matcap and the scene built. So it's a combination. It's not just a Matcap. It's a combination of A, the outline, that gives you that solid outline all the time. B, using a shadow that's really geometry. So that's giving you a, you know, really fake shadow that works really, really well. You're drawing on the mesh at places that you need it, and obviously that will move. So that means you can, you know, you can definitely move this around and get to the shot that you want, or the frame that you want. And then you're also working with all of the different things up here in your post process. So you can really come up with, you know, lots and lots of dynamic looks here. And don't forget, we've frozen the model at this stage, so you could have saved it out and you could repose it for lots and lots of different shots. And also, one last little tip is, if you've got this black on the ear, before you did that, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to set a layer on here, so you could actually dial that back in and out for different shots. So you don't want, you know, I've painted it and it's permanent. If you'd have done it on a layer, you can just slide it back and it would disappear. But that's how I do comic look Matcaps and scenes like this. I do exactly the same in ZBrush, with a few more. It's got a few more things in ZBrush than we've got here in Nomad, but you can get pretty much everything that you want out of this, out of Nomad. And again, I've just matched to one frame of a comic here. But you could like design your own. You know, if you wanted to build up your own comic book, it's just a case of you deciding, you know, how the Matcap works for you, whether you need a stronger black in the Matcap or less. I mean, that is literally 50% black. So if you look there, it's all black from one side, and that was the original one we used. And with the 3-finger roll, you can move that around and get the positioning that you want. So have a go at that. I'd love to see what you get up to. So join us on the Facebook groups, or the Nomad Facebook group is one good place where you can post your work, or our Facebook groups. And then please feel free to buzz me in the comments down below with what you've been doing. I hope you're enjoying these videos, and if you are, please give us a thumbs up. It does help us to get in front of other people who like this kind of content. And if you like it enough to drop us a like, then please subscribe to the channel. Hope you have a great week, and see you soon.